So meditation is a practice that has been around for thousands of years, used by different cultures, different people, and used for various purposes, relaxation, stress reduction, self-awareness, whatever the reason might be. Most of us probably are not doing meditation explicitly or what you call meditation, but just as a label, I think we all get that meditation is important because even if you don't call it meditation, I would imagine most people like to take some quiet time and contemplate their life, do some introspection. They might want to try to clear their mind of a lot of the thoughts, especially when, the vagaries of life are around us and can at times stress us out. So, meditation as a label is a bit of a loaded term. It might mean something quite specific to certain people. But I think if we just step back from any specific definition, this idea that there are better states of mind to be in, and those states of mind are typically calm, what you might call a kind of inner peace or tranquility, I think most people get that that's a good thing. And we could probably use more of that in our life. So when I say meditation, I kind of use it as that label, even though it does mean something quite specific to some people and to some cultures. We all get that meditation is important. There is a better state of mind to be in than what we might be in at any given time. Whether that's stressful or just preoccupied with a lot of different things, there's a lot of aspects to our life. There are always lots of things to think about. And a more meditative state, whatever that might mean to you, is a good thing. It's good to be relaxed. It's good to have stress reduction, good to have self-awareness, the ability to focus, to have a clear mind. Let's think about the ways that people tend to meditate. Obviously, most of us would kind of envision a quiet, comfortable space that someone would choose where they're not disturbed. They might sit or lie down in a comfortable position and then use some kind of chair or cushion to get that position that they need, keep their back straight. Maybe they're putting their hands on their lap in that kind of iconic position of meditation or something like this. There is the focusing of attention, right? Usually an object of focus is thought of. Could be your breath, could be a kind of mantra, like a word or a phrase. Some people might use a candle flame or maybe some specific thought or visualization within their mind. Breathing kind of mindfully is what people often do. They might use their breath to focus. They might pay attention to the inhalation and exhalation of their breath. They might notice the sensation of the air entering and leaving their body, this kind of thing. Some people might set up a timer, especially those that are just starting. They might want to just do it for 5 or 10 minutes. And so they set that timer and they say that during this time, I will try to, let's say, clear my thoughts or something like this. There might be a guided meditation. Some people will use apps or recordings to kind of have a teacher at the other end guiding you through the process. The term mindfulness is pretty popular right now. Meditation is often combined with mindfulness. The idea is basically you observe your thoughts and feelings without judgment as they come and go. And, and just, again, the posture that you're in, the room that you're in, the absence of noise, this kind of thing. But in all those cases, I'm talking about meditation happening periodically. It might just be something that someone does every morning or maybe every evening, maybe the middle of the day, but it's not all day. It's a session, right? People do meditation as a session. And the problem, I think, with this, the way that meditation is normally done and in many ways has been done for a long time, is that it's only done periodically. And yet the state of mind that makes the most difference in our life is only achieved through meditation, you could argue, right? If you think about life and the state that you want your mind to be in, you want it to be calm, you want it to be thoughtful, contemplative, you want to be in control, you want to be able to focus. But when we do meditation as just a session, even if it's every day, that session is a very small proportion of your overall day, a very small percentage of the hours that you're awake. When meditation is only done periodically, then that state of mind that we want to be in, that leads to better things, that allows us to focus, to have an inner peace, to have control, it doesn't last. It just evaporates. It's only in one small part of our day. If we think about some of the reasons that meditation as practiced today doesn't last, right? The issue of doing it only kind of as a session, well, one, it's inconsistent, right? Even if you're doing meditation every day, there's still an inconsistency there in terms of the proportion that meditation makes up for the overall waking hours, right? Obviously, meditation is most effective when practiced regularly, but if someone practices sporadically, then the benefits would not be as pronounced or lasting. Consistency is the key to reaping any kind of long-term reward. Some people might attach high expectations to meditation, right? They might expect meditation to bring, immediate or permanent changes. And, those significant and lasting changes often require time and consistent effort in reality. So having these unrealistic expectations can often lead to disappointment. Maybe the stressful environment. Again, we're going through reasons why, meditation as practice today doesn't last, right? Stressful environment. Maybe someone has a stressful and negative environment that they're around, and the calming effects that you would otherwise get through meditation tend to be overshadowed by those external stressors. A lack of integration, right? Meditation can teach valuable skills in terms of mindfulness and relaxation, but those need to be integrated into daily life, right? And if someone meditates, but then continues to engage in stressful and unhealthy habits, then the benefits of meditation might not last long outside that actual meditation session. People tend to attach things to outcomes. So paradoxically, being attached to the outcomes of meditation can actually hinder its effectiveness, right? If someone meditates with the sole purpose of, let's say, achieving some specific state of mind that they think they're supposed to be in, then you can imagine they might become frustrated, and then just because it doesn't go the way they think. And actually letting go of attachments and being open to whatever experience arises can actually enhance things like meditation. Could be changing circumstances, right? Life changes all the time. New stressors and challenges arise, and those could offset the benefits of meditation. The depth of the practice needed. The deeper, more advanced meditation techniques often provide lasting effects, but how many people are going to be able to take it that deep and do it for that long? And, just a range of other personal factors, right? Everybody's individual's mind and body is different, and some people might naturally respond more positively to meditation, and they might experience some longer lasting effects than others, and others might find it more challenging. So, look, I said at the beginning, meditation's been around for a long time, and I think in some sense of that word, meditation, we all get it's important. It's good to have a focused mind, a mind that you're in control of, a level of mental discipline, what you might call inner peace, or, but the point is we all get that meditation is important. We want to be able to have control of our mind. We want to be able to go through circumstances having that control, that mental discipline. But if you look at the ways that people tend to meditate today, it's all about the session. It's all about removing yourself from the stressors, finding that quiet place, being calm, and trying to achieve that mental state, and then only doing that for a very small portion of the day. So even though people that do meditation every day, it's still a session. It's still a very small percentage of the day. So in some sense, it's not very consistent. Not the level of consistency, I'm going to argue, that should be there for meditation. Because again, meditation is the state of mind that we really want and arguably need to be in. So if you're only doing it for the beginning of the day or the end of the day, and then the rest of that time, it just kind of evaporates. It's kind of like going to a motivational talk, or maybe reading something that gets a quote or something, gets you pumped up, gets you motivated, but then it doesn't last. It doesn't last the rest of the day, let alone the week. And there's something wrong with that. When meditation is done only periodically, the state of mind that makes the most difference in our life just evaporates. And I gave a number of reasons why people just find it difficult to stick with. So what I am arguing in this episode is that we need our desired state of mind to always be on. We need our desired state of mind to always be on. We need to see our life as meditation. It's not a session. Meditation should be our life. It should be the thing that we're just always doing. Now, it might sound challenging, especially if you think of meditation in the usual way as kind of a session where you kind of isolate yourself from the craziness of life and try to really, really focus hard. You can't imagine doing that all day. But before we get into, what I think is a solution to make this happen, let's think about just consistency in general and how important consistency is. And keep in mind that doing a small session every day, when it comes to your mind state, I would argue is not really a genuine consistency. If it was something more physical, like working out, exercising, that could be argued as a type of consistency because you need a lot of rest from what you're doing there. But we're talking about a mental state that you want to be in order to navigate the complexities of life and make decisions and relate to people. I think of that as being something that needs to kind of always be there. And I'll be clear, that's not to say that there never should be a meditation session, whatever that might be to you. If there are times to go for walks and contemplate. There are times to isolate yourself from the noise. There are times to put that additional extra focus of your mind or the ability to empty your mind. Okay, but I don't think these are things that should just be relegated to the session. So let's focus on consistency. And consistency in this episode is just something that you're essentially always doing. The benefits of consistency are things like efficiency, right? Consistency allows for the development of efficient routines and processes. And the more you do it, the more you learn. You see what actions lead to positive outcomes, and you can start to focus on those. That's true for personal habits, and work tasks, and business operations, whatever it is, right? Predictability, right? Consistency provides a sense of predictability and stability. Okay? So the more that you are doing something, not only do you learn more about how to make it better, but it gives you a sense of predictability and stability in life, which in some sense you need. Of all the things that are unpredictable in life, which is the majority of things, you need something to land on. You need something that gives you that sense of stability, that anchor. And so consistency can help provide that. We know that consistency can help maintain and lead to quality, right? Whether it's, literally producing goods and producing services or whatever it is, or providing services, we know that consistency can result in higher quality outcomes, but that's true for your life as well, right? Learning and improvement. Obviously, if you keep doing something, you give yourself a lot more chances to identify what works. And you kind of create a baseline for yourself for learning and improvement. It reduces stress, kind of coming back to that stability idea, right? That predictability and reliability will reduce the stress that comes from uncertainty. We know that uncertainty is a fact of life, but you don't want to jump into uncertainty so full-fledged that you have nothing, again, to kind of anchor your life on, right? And there's ways of building trust and leading you to longer-term success, facilitating growth, even fostering innovation, again, whether that's something tangible you're making or just in your own life. Okay? So meditation, in the sense that you can build self-awareness, you can have an inner kind of peace or tranquility or calmness, reduce the stress in your life. We all get that that's important, regardless of how explicitly you might be trying to do meditation or not. But if you look at the way that it's practiced today, whether that's isolating yourself, focusing your attention on something specific, your breath, using a timer, guided apps, practicing mindfulness, trying to achieve some specific posture, it's still periodic. It's still not the type of consistency, I would argue, that's needed for something like a mental state. When meditation is done only periodically, the state of mind that makes the most difference evaporates for the majority of your day, and I think that's a problem. You can see the benefits of consistency, efficiency and predictability and quality and learning, things that lead to longer-term success and all that kind of stuff. So I want to use an analogy to kind of argue that consistency, in the sense that I'm using in this episode, something that's always on, always available, is actually a lot easier to achieve than only doing something in a session and then hoping the rest of the day you can somehow claw back at whatever it is you achieved during that session. So I was out with my family and we were in the mall and there were these Chinese performers and, they were dressed in these kind of big lion outfits and they had this really tall pole. And one of the guys dressed in the lion outfit, he was up on that pole. And this is like, 15 feet high or so. It was really tall. And then you had 2 or 3 other people kind of helping to make sure that the pole did not tip over. Now, many assume discipline requires a great deal of effort, but if you think about it, if it's done correctly under consistency, it actually requires little effort. And that's because discipline works by constant attention. It's like keeping the pole balanced. As long as there is constant attention, then the effort is minimal. Okay, so if the person up on the pole starts to shift his weight, obviously the pole is going to start to lean. And you can imagine that if you're not paying attention, it's going to lean by quite a bit and it's going to be that much harder to push it back. But if you're really attentive, if you're really focused, if you're truly consistent, if it's always on, then the amount of deviation that pole is going to have from its equilibrium position is going to be quite minor because you're always paying attention. And so the amount of force needed to bring it back is minimal. It's inattention that requires a great deal of effort. Okay. People tend to think that, the effort required in life works in linear terms, right? So let's think of the pole as kind of this simple system. And you can think of that as related to the concept of a restoring force in physics. So when the pole is displaced from its center position, and then there's a force exerted by people to bring it back to the center, and people would kind of assume that the force is proportional to the displacement from the center. In other words, the more the pole moves, that's in kind of relation to the amount of force I would have to push back. More specifically, if it, goes 1 inch my way, I have a certain amount of force to push back. And if it goes 2 inches, then maybe it's kind of like double the force. And if it's 3 inches, maybe it's kind of like triple the force, right? That's the kind of the linear way that we think. You might do this with something like Hooke's law or something to relate, the force exerted to restore an object to its original position and then, relate it to the displacement of that object. But, we don't need to get into that. The point is that humans tend to think of both mechanical systems and their life in these very linear terms. By however much this thing got displaced, that's about as how much I need to push it back, right? Seems to make sense. But real life isn't linear like that. Okay, the relationship between the force required to restore, let's say, this pole to its original position, and the amount of deviation from the center would actually be nonlinear, and that's because the effort required to correct the pole's position is not directly proportional to the displacement in this real-world scenario. There'd be a nonlinearity to it. So it's like saying, okay, it goes 1 inch out of deviation, I got to push back, but 2 inches is actually a lot more effort to push back. 3 inches out would be even more, much more, like exponentially more, to use that term, than it would be. In other words, it doesn't go in lockstep like you would think. A little bit of difference makes a ton of difference in terms of how much effort it is to bring back. This nonlinearity can be due to a number of factors. So if we're talking about a pole, it would be things like material properties of the pole, the distribution of weight along the pole, maybe the mechanics of the human body involved in the process. Okay, if you wanted to describe this nonlinear relationship in some kind of mathematical term, you'd use something like a power law. And, without getting into details, basically, it's got the force, it's got the constant that represents the stiffness, it's got the x as the kind of the displacement of the pole, but it's got this exponent. And that exponent is where this nonlinearity comes from. And so if you were to draw that out on a chart graph, you would see this thing bend up, and that's where it's kind of getting this exponential behavior from. Right? So if you're following x along the x-axis, and the more displacement that the pole has from its proper center position, so the Chinese performer with his lion outfit is shifting his weight, and that pole starts to deviate, a little bit of deviation can require a lot of force to bring it back. That's the nonlinearity. Okay? So what are the sources of those nonlinearity in this situation? Okay, I mentioned some of them. So material properties, right? So imagine different materials can have different nonlinear responses to stress and strain, right? Could be like the elasticity of the pole might change nonlinearly with displacement. That could lead to a nonlinear force displacement relationship. There might be complex mechanical interactions, right? The way the pole interacts with the ground, the way the force gets transmitted through the supporting structure, right? That can introduce nonlinearities. There could be types of friction, things like this. Obviously, human factors, people supporting the pole. You got mechanics of the human body that act a certain way. Those might introduce nonlinearities. The structural stiffness, there might be variations in the stiffness of that pole along its length, kind of anisotropically, you might say, right? So different parts of the pole might require different amounts of force to restore to equilibrium. Okay, so why am I talking about, the material properties of this pole? Well, again, analogies are never just analogies. These patterns exist for a reason. It's not really about the physical aspect of something. This notion of an object that has attributes or characteristics to it which could bring about certain nonlinearities as that object interacts with its environment is very much what happens in life. Life is a complex system, and we interact in many ways. Our dependencies kind of tendril out like a fractal into all different areas of life. And we have all these different sources of nonlinearities, right? So I was talking about the pole with material properties, what might that mean in the context of life? We can imagine material properties could be likened to one's inherent qualities and characteristics, right? Like your physical health or your mental resilience, maybe genetic predispositions in some cases. These are properties that determine how stable, quote unquote, you are in the face of life's challenges, right? Maybe someone has a naturally optimistic temperament and they might have a different kind of quote unquote material property, right, than someone who tends to be pessimistic or something like that. We were talking about complex mechanical interactions. Well, in the context of life is intricate and it's influenced by numerous dynamic interactions, of course, right? Just like the pole, although much more with life, right? So the complex mechanical interactions, the analogy there might be kind of the external forces acting on your life, like societal expectations, economic factors, and global events, right? We have economic recessions, we have political changes, cultural shifts, and those can be thought of as exerting significant forces on your life, which is going to require adjustments to maintain stability. Again, this is not just some analogy, right? This is informationally the way that nonlinearities build up in your life, and it's going to require force to bring them back, okay? Which would be some effort that you're applying to your life to reestablish your equilibrium, right? Human factors, right? Choices, emotions, decisions, right? In your career, in your relationships, your personal habits, the way that you personally respond to different situations. These can also be sources of nonlinearity, right? Kind of taking you away from your stable state and requiring effort to restabilize it. We talked about the structural differences across the pole, and think about that in terms of, one's support systems and coping mechanisms, right? Your family, your friends, financial security, the resources that you have for your mental health. If a person with strong social support and effective coping skills might be considered, quote unquote, structurally stiff, right? When they face their challenges compared to someone who doesn't. So it's the same idea. You've got someone balancing on a pole. We tend to think that the amount by which the pole deviates has kind of a proportional amount of force that would be required to restore it back to balance. But the reality is it's not really proportional. It doesn't go in lockstep. If it deviates by 1 inch, it's got this much force. But if it deviates by 2 inches, it's way more than just, double. And if it goes by 3, it's even more. It's like an exponential curve kind of going up. And so this relates back to, if you want to keep that pole stable in your life, well, if you want to keep the pole stable, right, for this analogy, then you should be keeping constant attention on that pole, because if it's constant attention, the deviation will never be that great. But if you don't have, the less consistent you are with that attention, the more deviation that pole is going to have. And if it's a nonlinear system, it's going to be that much harder to bring back. Every little bit of deviation is going to be that much harder. And you can imagine that real life is far more nonlinear and complex and non-trivial than something like a pole, right? And so the amount of restoring, quote unquote, force, whatever it is you have to do to restore your equilibrium, is going to be that much more challenging the less attentive you are. Okay, so let's go back to what I was saying about meditation. When I say meditation, however you want to take that, it's important that we all have some type of meditative state, self-awareness, quiet mind, tranquility, mental discipline, because without that, then life is going to pull us in all kinds of different directions. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Okay, it doesn't matter if you're talking about getting the right job or maintaining the right job or trying to innovate and create and anything in life, build relationships with people, just be relaxed. It's critical. It's critical for your health, mental and physical. It's critical for you to be recognized in your workplace and for you to contribute to society and all that kind of stuff, right? So meditation is not some niche thing that only some people do. We should all, to some extent, be able to achieve the state of mind that we deem is most important. The way people tend to do this is they find the quiet place, they focus on the breath, they set up a timer, they have some guided app, mindfulness posture, this kind of stuff. But this is all sessions. It's all periodic, right? It's more like balancing a pole. If you're doing a session, you would never balance the pole. Meditation is a mental state that should always be on. If it's only done periodically, then the state of mind that makes the most difference in our life is going to evaporate. Doesn't make sense to only do it once a day. We need a desired state of mind to always be on, right? There's massive benefits to consistency, efficiency, predictability, quality, the learning and trust, success, growth, innovation, all that kind of stuff, as it all applies to your everyday life. I use that analogy of keeping the pole stable because I think it's a good one. And I don't think it's just an analogy, right? We think in linear terms, a little bit of displacement and then more displacement, more displacement. I can always bring it back because it's going to, the amount of effort I need to exert to bring that pole back is always going to be in lockstep kind of with the amount that the pole displaced, but it's not really like that. 1 inch is very different than 2 inches. 3 inches is very different than 2 inches. It's very different in an exponential fashion. And that's why you've got to have constant attention to the things that matter. Something as important as the mental state that makes the most difference in your life needs to always be on. You talked about the sources of nonlinearity. First we started with this pole analogy, but then I said in the context of life, right? Right? Different temperaments, societal expectations and economic factors, personal habits, career decisions, right? How much do things deviate from one's life from a stable state, and what is the required effort to restabilize that in your life? So what do? What's the solution here? Well, we need to take something that is already consistent and make that the meditation. Because if I just say, take what you do as meditation now, or a lot of listeners probably don't meditate, but that's not really true. I think in some sense, we all do some type of quote unquote meditation, right? Maybe it's when you go for a walk. Maybe it's whenever you're kind of in that zone, or whatever you're really able to kind of clear your mind and have the kind of control, that introspection that you need, that mental discipline that is truly you and truly stable. Whenever that happens, that's typically a periodic thing, and if we're lucky, once a day. So to say that that's supposed to always be on, it seems quite challenging, especially if you think of meditation as requiring a great deal of effort to really empty your mind, and you might feel like you have to force a lot out, and it takes a lot of effort, but that shouldn't be surprising. Again, the pole example, right? If you're not always paying attention, it is going to be really hard to reestablish the mental state. So it's actually easier to maintain it all day than it is to only do it once in a while and only do it, let's say, every morning or something like that. So to make meditation the state of mind we want, and that leads to good things, a consistent and ever-present part of life, as per the pole example, the physical thing we need to do to connect ourselves to the mental state needs to be something that we're always doing already. And this is why our life needs to be meditation. When we work, when we play, when we go for coffee, watch a movie or a show, I think all of these can be considered a meditation. These activities all provide the opportunity to connect us to the mental state we desire through meditation. So meditation is a focus, it's a mental discipline. Whether it's focusing on emptying the mind or something specific, it is still a focus. And to get better at mental focus works like any other thing we wish to get better at. Adaptation to stressors. There has to be something to overcome. So if you think about the way people might envision or usually do meditation, it'd be like a silent room. A silent room might seem like an ideal situation to meditate, but in fact, it's not ideal because it doesn't provide much to overcome. Thus, growing stronger in your mental discipline is less likely. But everyday life provides ample opportunities to overcome the vagaries of our world with focus and inner calmness. How can writing be meditation? Well, by seeing it as an opportunity to overcome the apprehension of writing. How can playing with your child be meditation? Well, by seeing it as an opportunity to focus on the richness of the moment. How can watching television be meditation? By seeing it as an opportunity to focus on the story, the meaning, the structure. How can giving a presentation at a board meeting be meditation? By seeing it as an opportunity to focus on rising above your nervousness or on remaining concise and confident. Any and all events in life present us with opportunities to overcome the parts that pull us away from what matters, making us stronger at the very thing we all want to achieve, but which so many seek quiet and solitude to find. Now, again, I'm not saying there's not a place for quiet and solitude or to do things in a sessional manner. But meditation is too important to leave to one-off moments. It requires a strengthening that cannot be realized without consistent attention and adaptation against stressors. Okay? So, regardless of how you want to think of meditation, that is a mental state that we all need. It is a state that we all want. It's the better state to be in mentally. Better decisions, better relationships with people. You're more intelligent in that state. There's a reason why you're going after it. There's a reason why you go for that walk. It's a reason why you look for quiet places. But when meditation is only done periodically, the state of mind that makes the most difference in our life evaporates. We know it does. You don't get it back. It's very hard to. You might get it back the next day, but that's not the point. You're not only supposed to be meditative when you're meditating. That doesn't make sense. It's supposed to be something that lasts. The reasons that meditation is practiced today tend to not last is it's inconsistent, based on high expectations. There's stressful environments. There's lack of integration. People attach themselves to outcomes. We need our desired state of mind to always be on. There's serious benefits to consistency, true consistency, not an everyday consistency, an every minute consistency. Efficiency, predictability, quality, learning, trust, innovation. I use that pool example. I think it's a really good visualization. Right? People tend to assume that discipline requires a great deal of effort because that's probably what you would be doing in a session where you're really trying to empty your mind and focus. But genuine discipline actually requires very little because discipline works by constant attention, and that's what you have to get better at. It's like keeping the pole balanced. As long as there is constant attention, the effort is minimal. It's inattention that requires effort. Life is nonlinear. The amount of deviation in your life away from the stable state doesn't need to be much in order for it to be really, really hard to bring back. You need to pay constant attention. So, in order to be consistent, the only thing that's truly consistent throughout our entire day is life itself, the thing that we're always doing. So to make meditation the state of mind that we want and leads to good things, it needs to be an ever-present part of our life. And this is why our life needs to be the meditation. Okay? The only way you get better at something is by adaptation. If you put yourself into the silent room where there are no stressors and the vagaries of life are there's nothing to overcome, there's nothing to adapt to. So just like a muscle, there's no reason it's going to grow. You need to get better at the mental state. So you need to be doing something that you're constantly trying to overcome. And that's what makes you stronger. And that's what allows you to be more consistent. And everyday life provides ample opportunities to overcome the vagaries of our world and to get better and stronger, just like a muscle, but this time building, that kind of inner calmness, that mental discipline. Okay? Writing can be meditation because you can overcome the apprehension of not wanting to write. Playing with your child can be meditation because it's an opportunity to focus on the richness of the moment. Again, these are mind states that you want to be in. Watching television, focus on the story, the meaning, the structure, visualize it in your mind, mentally map it out. It's an opportunity to build the muscle, an opportunity to build the discipline. Any and all events in life present us with opportunities to overcome the parts that pull us away from what matters. Okay? Meditation is just too important. We know that's the state of mind we need to be in. It requires strengthening. It cannot be realized without consistent attention and adaptation against stressors. The pole is so much easier to keep balanced when our attention remains fixed on what matters. Make your life the meditation. Okay? That's it. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, take care.